For this video, I wanted to draw a celebrity portrait, but I had a hard time choosing who. But luckily, YouTube's algorithm decided to give me a helping hand. Cause last week, I've been binge watching MrBeast videos again, so I thought, why not? And since the MrBeast channel is all about challenges, I'm gonna challenge myself to draw his portrait under 60 minutes. So be sure to watch the full video to see if I make it.
I'm gonna go ahead and start the timer. Starting now, go!
Alright, time has officially started. Here you can see me start off by drawing a circle because I'm gonna use the Loomis technique to sketch the shape of the head. If you want to learn more about this technique, I have a detailed video where I explain how you can learn this. I will put the link below. Since I only had 60 minutes, I knew I couldn't spend too much time on the sketching. Normally, I always take my time to be 100% sure that all the proportions are correct. And if you are learning how to draw, you should too. But I have to admit, I felt the stress of the timer, and I should have spent a little more time on the sketch because when I started defining everything, the drawing was still a bit off, which I only realized when it was too late. So I guess I learned my lesson, and the next time I do a challenge like this, I'll just make the drawing less detailed and focus more on the first stage to make sure my proportions are right. So, as you can see, here I started sketching the features, like the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the beard, the hair, and so on. And this is where I should have taken the time to take a second look, but I guess I was too focused on finishing the drawing. As I said in another video, no matter how much experience you have, you still keep learning with every drawing you make. Luckily, I did notice one of the biggest mistakes I made, which was the fact that the lower part, from the lips to the chin, was a bit too long. So I started erasing that part, looked back at my reference, and started correcting by sketching new lines. At this point, I started erasing some of the guidelines and started shading some of the darkest part of the drawing. But I made sure I did this in a light way, just so I had an idea of how it looked. Blocking in the general shape of the shading like this can give you a good overview of the drawing and help you to move on to some of the darker parts. It's important to build up the shading layer by layer. If you try to get the correct tone in the first pass, you can end up having to spend a lot of time correcting everything later on. Here you can see me finishing up by shading some of the mustache, the beard and the neck. And then I proceeded to take my dark pencil and started defining some of the details, like the eyes, the nose and the upper lip. From here on, I started feeling comfortable to work on the rest of the shading. And I started building up the shading in the face layer by layer. In between the layers of pencil, I switched to my blending stump every now and then to smooth out some parts. If you don't know what a blending stump is, or you want to learn more about the correct way to use one, I also made a full video on this topic, which I will link below. I choose to not blend everything, but I only do this on the parts that I felt needed it. If you start overusing your blending stump, your drawing can end up looking washed out and you can lose your definition. At this point, I normally take a small break to really inspect my drawing and make sure everything looks right before putting in any further details or dark shading. But as I looked at the timer, I knew I couldn't really waste too much time, since there was still a lot to do. So I dove right into working out some of the details. I started shading in the eyes, and I also started defining some of the dark shapes in the cheeks. Here you can see me filling in some of the mustache and the beard, and creating a texture by drawing single sketchy lines next to each other. Be careful to not fill in the whole beard the same way. But pay close attention to your reference and you will see not every part is as dark as the other. Also, I started drawing more of the neck and shoulders, since there is a big shadow under his chin, which is important for the light and dark balance in the drawing. From here on, I'm moving around, working on different parts where I felt it was needed. I started drawing some of the hair and shading in the ear. But at this point, it started becoming difficult since I didn't know how detailed I could make the drawing before I arrived on the 60-minute mark. So I decided to move around a lot and make sure most parts were built up evenly. I had enough time to work a bit more on the details and build up some more of the shading. I really wanted to make sure there was enough contrast in the drawing and it didn't look unfinished since it wasn't a sketch anymore. I also added a bit of background to make sure the light parts on the face pop out a bit more. This changed the look of the drawing immediately and I felt confident that I would be able to have a decent result by the 60-minute mark. So now in the last stretch I could really focus on finishing the drawing by smoothing out some of the shading, adding a bit more contrast and clearing up some of the edges by erasing smudges and refining some of the lines around the facial features. This took up all the remaining time I had left and it really started feeling like a race to the finish, as I didn't want to cheat by passing the 60-minute mark. I kept looking back and forth at the timer and my reference as I was figuring out what I could do to still improve the drawing. And there you go. 60 minutes passed and I was able to finish the drawing just in time. Now that I passed the challenge, let's take a look at the finished result. If you liked this video and want to learn more, feel free to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.